Hey friends, welcome back. Now, let's dive into a common problem which often arises when it comes to a data source like I have here, which is what if I like to compare my sales for a specific day versus the prior day sales. And I'm going to show you what I mean. If I go to my orders table, let me actually make this smaller from the orders table, the order date, let me take this option here. And then let me also, if I go to the formatting option here, make sure that I only display the day, month, year level in here. And I also like to maybe increase the text size. You can see this better on your screens. If I go to the forming option and values, I can then take here the text size and say 15 OK. And we are good to go. So we can see here we got the order dates and we got here the 4th of July starting 2019 and so on. And if you want to display the total sales, let's take this option here, you would see here the total sales amount for each of those days. So far so good. Now, what if I like to compare this now to my previous day sales? Now the first issue, and this is the main problem here, is if you take a closer look, we have sales on the 4th, that's fine. On the 5th, that's also fine. So we can easily compare the 2229 versus the 566. That's not an issue. However, then we have a gap because here we have the 8th of July. So obviously we have no sales data for the 6th and the 7th for whatever reason. But this continues through the data set. So we get here, for instance, 910 and 1112. But then there's number 1314. And then there's 15. Right. So obviously we got sales or days in this data set where there have not been any sales. Now, what I would like to do here is I like to compare, let's say here's an example, the 2760 versus the sales of my previous day. Now, the previous day would in my case then not be the 7th of July because there were no sales. I would like to see actually the comparison based on, in this case, the 5th. Right, because this was the last day where we actually generated sales. And I'd like to know on the next day, on the 8th, do we better as last time, or worse? And in order to say that, I need to compare this to the prior day where actually sales have been generated. Let's first do it wrongly with the time attention function, which is available for us, which is the previous day option. So you could say, I right-click on the measures table, go to no measure and say, oh yeah, that's easy. Just figure out the previous day sales. I say previous day sales and I call it wrong. So it's a long name, I know. But as I said, be free to cover with better names if you want. So but this is the wrong way to do it. We say, I'd like to calculate because I need to modify the filter context. Remember, I'd like to see not, for instance, for the 12th of July, I'd like to see not the data for 12, but from the prior day, that is why I need to modify this context here. And this is why we use calculate. Then for the expression, we say, I'd like to see here my total sales. That's fine. Totally sales. And then as a filter, we specify the previous day function. So here you can see it returns a previous day. And in our case, we refer to the orders table. And then the order data. So from the orders table, the order data. Here it is, we can close this and also then close the calculate function. And we say, yes, we have done it. We are good to go. Let's evaluate that. And let's just see what we get. Okay, there's our previous day sales. And if we go now to this case, our table, just evaluate that. And go to the previous day sales, take this option. And we see what we get. So obviously, here this works perfectly because we have sales for the prior day. But then here, for instance, for the 8th of June, for 2019, we get a blank. And the reason simply is because we don't have any sales on the prior day, which would be the 7th of July. And then the same is true for a lot of different other roles, right? Where the data is simply not there. So obviously, this does not work. So what do we do? Well, we need to modify this and sneak dive a little bit deeper into DAX. So what we would like to do instead is we'd like to create a measure, which returns us exactly the prior day. Okay. That's what we need to evaluate here. So to do that, let's create the measure, right? Click on the measure table and say, I like to create a new measure. And this will be previous day sales. So let's call it previous day sales is equal to, let me go to new line. Press Shift Enter and also make this bigger. And now we create a variable bar. And within this variable, we would like to store actually the last day, we'd like to store what we more precise, the maximum day of all the days prior to the day we evaluate in here in the table. Or whatever kind of visual use. So please evaluate the maximum day to this day. So all the prior days, in this case, from 4 to 11. So all of those, and only return the maximum day where we have actually sales, right? For the 12th, it would be 11. So the table is fine. But for the 15, for instance, the maximum day should be the 12. And this is what we try to calculate using DAX. So let's go back to the measure and define here variable and say, this is the actual previous date, or day. And let me also use the underscore. Just to be here consistent. Okay, is equal to, and now we go to line and evaluate the max x expression. So again, remember all the x functions are iterator functions. That means their first argument is always a table, because they iterate row by row through this table. Now the table for us will be a filter table. That's where use the filter function. And we can use the filter function because the filter function returns a table, which has been filtered by the second expression, the filter expression, but still it returns table. And that is why we can use it as the first argument in the max x function. So we want to filter the orders table. We would like to make sure that we remove any kind of filters from the order table. So we use the all function. Then we give it the table itself, which is the orders VBL. And then we want to make sure here, of course, we could also do this format. This a bit, go to line here, and also go to line here, maybe like this. So all orders. And then we make sure that the orders date from the order table. So orders date. So orders. TBL date. Where is it? There it is. Order date. Okay, just a short lap. So that this date is less than the selected value. So here returns the value when there's only one value in specific column, otherwise returns all the alternate results. So selected value from the order date from the order table, this one here. And then we can close this. And I can also make sure that this here close the filter function. So that this is the expression we want to have. And from the expression which we return by the maximum, even though it's called expression here, it could also refer to a table, a column. And this is what we do here, because we want to return the order date. So order date from the order table. That's it. Okay. And maybe you go to move line here as well to have this one. And okay. Here need to go inside. Okay, like that maybe. and I think might be an issue here. So let's actually go back. Yes, that's what I want. Just a second. Go on here, go to line here. Just to have this together, because you can see here, there's an issue regarding this. Okay, like that. Let's close this here. And that's actually it, which we want to evaluate. Okay. So that means please return the maximum of a filter table. This filter table will contain all the orders, which are less than the selected value from the orders table. And this selected value, this one is coming from the view you have, in this case a table. That could also be any kind of bar chart or whatever kind of visualization you have. So the selected value here for this row would be the 16th of July. And we want to make sure that we would like to have the maximum up to this value, which in this case would be the 15th, or for the 15th, it would not be the 14th, it would be the 12th. Okay. So that's what this variable stores, so the day itself. And now we can go to a new line here and say it like to return something. So use a turn keyword, because use a variable, you also need to return something. And for the return here, we simply specify I'd like to calculate. My expression will be my total sales, because this is what we evaluate here in this context. And we'll make sure that the orders table orders TVL, the order date TVL, order date down here. There you go. That this one is equal to the value which we have stored here to the underscore actual previous date. And that's also just to follow the store here. Like that. Okay. And that's basically it. So we simply store the maximum day where we actually have sales in here in this variable. And then we value the total sales for the specific date. So for the prior day with sales, and then press enter to value that. And then we should get our previous day sales here. And now if we have a look, instead of using our previous day sales wrong, let's untick this option to remove it from the view. And let's go over the previous day sales and put in the right option here. And we can see that we got the values. And by the way, I'll see from here just to format this correctly. So make sure that we have this here as well. Take this option here and receive the same balances here. But you see exactly what I mean here. We get exactly the day the prior day sales, but here for the 8th. Now we compare the 2700 to the 2229, which is exactly the value from the 5th, not from the 7th. And we don't get a blank in here, for instance, right? And this is now much better for comparison, at least for the data set I have. And if I want to now compare those two, I can simply calculate the difference by simply subtracting those two measures, or I can calculate the percentage difference by dividing them. If you do that, please keep in mind use the divide function as best practice. But you can do any kind of comparison now if you want. Okay. And yeah, that's it for this video. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have data like I have here, so you're dealing with data where you don't sell on every day for whatever reason, then this could be a problem you run into. And if so, now you know how to fix it. Okay. So that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching. And I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys. Best guys.